Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our April 2021 Camera Club of Richmond meeting. We're excited tonight to have a presentation by our new president, Bob Schamerhorn. Just a couple of words about Bob. His fascination with nature went back to his childhood. As he tells me, that interest had him exploring everywhere from his neighborhood creeks in Lynchburg, Virginia, to the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, all the way to the salt marshes of the Outer Banks in North Carolina. He's a fledgling of the Virginia Society of Ornithology, the VSO, and also was a member of the Lynchburg Bird Club in the 1970s. As a youth, they sponsored him twice to the Virginia Garden Club's nature camp. He graduated from E.C. Glass High School in Lynchburg in 1979. We're dating you there, Bob. And attended college at Virginia Tech in the early 1980s. He studied art and design. And as Bob says, he's an enthusiast, not an expert, but I don't know, I tend to disagree with that. But obviously Bob has now moved to Richmond. He's currently a resident here where he lives with his wife, Lori. And Lori's also a member of the Camera Club, but couldn't join us tonight. But he says that she's his best friend and his #1 supporter. So as an advocate of conservation, he frequently shares his experiences with nature at lots of different venues and organizations. And he loves to get out with his camera and enjoy the birds and the outdoors at any opportunity that presents itself. And he just really loves to share the beauty of God's creatures. And that brings an appreciation of nature, and he likes taking that to other people. So this is one of the things that prompted us to ask Bob to speak tonight. And we kind of left it up to him to put together a topic. And what he chose to tell us about this time were a little closer to home. So he's going to talk about some of his favorite Virginia photo sites. So I am going to, with no further ado, turn this over to Bob Schamerhorn and let him take us on a little tour of Virginia.
Thanks, Karen. Let's see here. I'm going to get this one here. Okay. Screen has come up jet black now. Hopefully your screen has gone black. I'm gonna get this started here too. Alrighty. So this is a program I put together just specifically for the club for this evening here too. It was a lot of fun to put together. I thought about it for a while and was a little surprised how struggling it was in the beginning to kind of get a list narrowed down of my favorite places to do photography in the state of Virginia. Some of them, so a couple of them I kind of ended up clustering a few together that are near each other. But Virginia just has such an amazing diversity, both geographic and seasonal. So you get a wonderful diversity in that. And through that comes a great diversity of plants and animals, which I love photographing, especially birds. We have 4 different groups: resident birds, breeding birds, winter birds, and then we have birds that are here all year round. So we have 4 distinct groups just in that genre alone. And just since we're a camera club, I thought I'd get this part out of the way. I'm a Canon guy. I kind of always have been since the digital age anyways, except my first camera was a Kodak, but I'm currently shooting a 5D Mark III. I have a couple of prime lenses I use all the time, almost always on a tripod, and occasionally with a little camo or uniform, as I call it. So one of the first places I chose, coming in at number 10 on the top 10 charts, is Grayson Highlands. So some of these places I've just been a few times. Other places I've been lots of times. We went up here last year in the heat of July. And was just so pleasantly surprised up there at the upper elevations to find that there was still just such a beautiful place. It was green and lush, just like those upper elevational climates are. This is up at about 4,000 feet at the part there. This is a little higher. This is my friend Paul. He's definitely outstanding in his own field. But I was really pleasantly surprised how many of the wildflowers that I love so much were still blooming. They're a little past their prime, but the mountain laurels were still going pretty strong. The flaming azalea, these are both native wildflowers to Virginia. So it's really neat to some of those. The green lush areas where the moss is. This is the red eft. It is the juvenile version of the red spotted salamander, the red spotted newt. And up there, we also found a yellow-bellied sapsucker nest. Now, this is a bird down here in the Piedmont that is only here in the wintertime. So it's really amazing to see it there nesting. Also, the area is known for its wild ponies. This is a young colt. This is the last morning, just a few hours before we had to leave. So was a real treat, was probably one of my favorite pictures from the entire trip there too. Was just a really pleasant morning, beautiful skies. So up there on the mountain, there's a beautiful visitor center with area history in it. There's picnic areas, the wild ponies. There's plenty of hiking everywhere. The ferns and moss are just so beautiful up there in the highland forest. There's also camping there, that was a camping trip for us if you enjoy that sort of thing as well. So the next little cluster is going to run us almost entirely across the other side of the state to the Newport News area. So here's kind of a cluster that when I go out here for a day trip, I'll often hit a couple of these places, maybe even 2 or 3 on the same day. The closest and first one I would reach is Jamestown. This is a place I've not been to a lot of times, but it's been very productive when I've been there. It's a great area for eagles because it is right there along the James River. There are nesting pairs in the area, and there are also songbirds in the forested areas there as well. So you get a nice mixture of different habitats with some open water areas, some pine forest areas, sort of marine, maritime things. But before I get to the island, I always like to take a free ride on the ferry across the river and back. It's about a 15 to 20 minute float across, and it's a great place if you're practicing flight photography. There are also birds in close when you're at the piers, like the Royal Tern coming in. So just never forget, whenever you end up really close on birds like that, don't forget to stop and get that portrait shot when you can, because those moments are often fleeting and rare. It's also a great place to find interactions where birds are trying to take over one of the perches that are there as you take off. And as I mentioned, it's a great flight photography ride over and back as well. There are often gulls follow the boat most of the way, and you'll see things as you go back and forth across. That was a Royal Tern there, and it's non-breeding plumage. But down to the loop itself is really great. It goes through different sections: grasslands, marshes, maritime forest, open water. And on the farther back loop, I've had the most. You see the 2 little owl symbols there. Here, I think I've seen more. I've taken more pictures on this section of the double loop there than anywhere last year, I think it was. I actually had a 2 owl species day in the same day, which has never happened before. So it was really a great treat. This owl tends to like this one little tree he roosts in. And about 10 o'clock or so in the morning, somebody told me if he was in there and the sun came and it's cold out, he might come out and sun himself when the sun comes and hits that side of the tree. This is the eastern screech owl in its rufous morph. Beautiful little owl. So just got really lucky that day. You know, finding owls is just so lucky. And then as I'm leaving the park, I see my buddy that I went to the park with pulled over on the roadside with his tripod out, and this barred owl was sitting out fairly in the open. He seemed to be hunting muskrats in the marsh grass there right along the roadside. So if you go there, keep an eye in the bushes and in the trees as you drive around. Drive slowly so you don't miss things. One of the next favorite spots over in that same little area there is in Newport News, known as the Lions Bridge. This place is active right now and will be for the next 2 to 3 weeks. It is active at this spot along the James River, where Lake Murray was formed by a dam. a man-made dam. So the herring that used to spawn up the creek that now fills the lake show up at the back of the dam. And after this happening for years, the rest of nature has now shown up to feast on the buffet of herring that are there at the back of the dam. You get pelicans, great blue herons. My favorite ever natural osprey shot came from there as well. And it was actually moments before my first 5D Mark II. This is where right after this picture slid off the tripod into knee-deep water and was destroyed in an instant. But I think it was worth it for me anyways. And just a really neat place. And I'm always reminded too, and this picture reminds me of it, is to turn around from time to time, because this song sparrow was singing right behind me where the osprey and the herring were fishing along the river. He would sit up there and perch and sing. Also, there's pathways with deciduous woods there where you'll get birds like the pileated woodpeckers. That nest was back there in the woods there too. And on the way out, that was an immature red-tailed hawk. So keep your eyes in there. Great walking trails, pretty easy walking as far as elevational up and down for the most part. Another spot is just across the highway from there, a little northeast, about 25 minutes or so, is Fort Monroe Park. And this is a place I've only been once. And there's an active fox den, and it is very active right now. This is one of the kits from last year. I was a little past the really, really cute newborn stage, but he's still got those black legs there. This is one of the adults that was creeping around the weeds. And there's one of the foxes there has 8 kits that are coming out of the nest, and they're right near the old runways there at Fort Monroe. It's not a very big place, and just look for the lineup of photographers. So 4 really great places there: Lions Bridge, the ferry, the Jamestown Island Loop, and of course Fort Monroe Park there. That place also has some little beach areas that sometimes there are sandpipers at. Also had a friend noting there was a meadowlark there in the last couple of days in some of the open grassy areas. Another place I haven't been to since this morning is Dutch Gap. This is a great little place, and depending on where you live, I'm all the way up on Northside Richmond, and for me, it's only about a 22-minute drive straight down 95 to Dutch Gap. It's one of those places that's just great all year round. There's always something there. The coot was back today. They have nested there at that marsh where the overlooks are, that outlook over the marsh. In the wintertime, you get wintering ducks. Excuse me. And once the vegetation grows up a little bit, you might get lucky and see a least bittern. They've been there the last probably 3 years at least. It's also a great place from the platforms to do flight photography. There's always something moving around from time to time. You get songbirds in there. This is the American goldfinch and its non-breeding plumage. And also I heard one this morning just as I was leaving on the way out. Prothonotary warbler. There's a very large, they're cavity nesting birds, large nesting box facility there of over 100 boxes. This is the American redstart. This is a spring migrant back in the woods there on some of the walking trails are always worth a walk. Indigo bunting, a summertime bird. These birds will be migrating into the area over the next couple of weeks or so. Definitely into the next month. And then there's lots of other stuff too, the dragonflies and turtles. Keep an eye out for a very difficult butterfly to photograph, the zebra swallowtail. Their food plant is the pawpaw, which there's lots of there. So that's a great place to find that species as well. And maybe you'll get lucky and find a snapping turtle laying eggs along one of the pathways. This is another place that I do occasionally see an owl at. One year we had a mom coming in and bringing mice into a baby up in a tree. That one was just on one of the back trails, hanging out one day. So they do have a visitor center there with bathrooms at the park. There's a historic park if you're not into wildlife. That's some really cool things there. It's great all year round. You get migratory birds and the ducks in the winter. So another place most of us are probably very familiar with, but really want to include this in because there are a lot of great little spots that we have right here in Richmond. There are all sections of different parkways right along the river, known as the James River Park. For you landscape guys, there's some great scenes there too, cityscapes. This is from the south side looking north. So is this as well, but the same scene at nighttime. So there were really a lot of great vantage points from across the river looking at the city. And then most people in the birding world know about 42nd Street's parking lot during spring migration, which is really pending into the next 2 to 3 weeks. Will really be perking up. It's kind of just trickling right now, but in about another week or two, it should be pretty strong. There's a mulberry tree up there in the parking lot. I always spend some time there. I've been known to just plop my chair down and wait. You get scarlet tanagers and cedar waxwings. This is a Swainson's thrush. You can see he's got a little mulberry dribble on his chin there. And then you go down the steps to the river and you get a whole nother group of birds down there. This is a mallard with her ducklings there in the river. Great blue herons will fish for herring, especially in the spring when they're running, which pretty much now is kind of the start of the run over the next few weeks as well. Prothonotary warblers, most of the time down there during the breeding season. I hear them at that location there between there and Reedy Creek, which is just a short, easy walk down and back too. So it's one we do a lot in the springtime. And it seems like I never leave the James River Park without seeing an eagle and an osprey, sometimes both at the same time chasing each other. And the Arch Bridge, probably one of the most photographed bridges in all of Richmond. So this is just upstream from there too. So the wetlands and the pony pasture section are probably the best, chance I could tell you if there's a go-to place to find an owl. That's a great place to look. There seems to be at least a couple of different groups there. There's one up towards pony pastures I hear that I've never seen. That is supposed to be sitting out with its youngs from time to time. And then on the other side of the river, you have the Teapotter Bridge, you have Brown's Island, you have the pipeline, another great little section of stuff there right at Tredegar. Always check to watch the local birds because there's not as much habitat around some of those parks on the city side. It's easier to find bird nests from time to time. And there along the river, there's all the riverine species that love the edge of the water, like the red-winged blackbird. The ospreys have always got a nest or two along there. I noticed there's a pair that's just downstream from the Teapotter Bridge, have shown back up. I'm not sure if they're going to use the pylon with the camera on it that has a webcam on it, but they seem to be carrying sticks to a different one. So we'll have to see where they end up. It's a great place to get that shot with them carrying a fish around too, especially when the herring are running 2 or 3 times along there. Now, a few years back, Pipeline was my go-to place every Saturday morning if the sun was out because of the nesting colony that was there. Unfortunately, they have moved their colony to different places. There was a start of a colony above the Lee Bridge for a couple of years. I'm not sure if it's built. I've not been up that way for a while. And there was another one starting at Dutch Gap too. Another great city park that gets kind of crowded. People will show up here at Bird Park and feed the ducks and stuff. It's not really a advised thing to do. They put some new signage up too. People were dropping off their farm ducks and they've had to remove some of those invasive critters over the winter as well. So they're really trying to help with some of that. But that park also had its great Hornell nest that was near the Carillon a few years back. I'm not sure if it's been active the last couple of years. And then I always try to keep an eye out whenever I see food source plants like holly and things like that. The park's always good every time of year, both in the fall and in the spring too. So always watch when there's nice short blooms cast out for birds to be out there looking for bugs. Anytime you can match up critters with flowers, it's a good combination. And then in the winter, we get these wonderful duck species. We can get quite a diversity of them from time to time and at different times of the year. And the ones that stay tend to get kind of used to people jogging and walking their dogs and and walking around the lake and things like that. So they become a little less skittish than they typically would be if they're just out at the refuge and things like that. So it can be a great opportunity to get some good shots of some of those species as well. And don't forget, if you ever end up in too close again, always try to think about that portrait shot, because those can be really nice too, just like in other circumstances. At Joseph Bryan Park, I know there's been several members of the club here been over photographing the great horned owl nest that was over there. There's other critters there too that are always fun too. There's pond areas down there where you get frogs, and sometimes you get sandpipers on the little mud flats in the spring. There's a native plant butterfly garden now up near the nature center, which is if you go down towards the bottom lake and cross the bridge, it looks like it's kind of going in the woods. It's up there on the hill. There's all kinds of native plants and stuff, which really do a better job attracting the native wildlife as well. Seems like I always see a red-tailed hawk or a red-shouldered hawk or something around there nearly every time I visit as well. This is the great horned owl nest that was 3 years ago now, I guess, that fledged Easter Day. This was the day before Easter, when the little guy was still down in the hole. Easter morning, I went down again, and they were up on the tree, which I knew they were getting ready to depart for points unknown into the woods to be raised and fed further by their parents for a while. So the Richmond City Park's great access points to them. There's ones on both the north and south of the river. And now with the bridge, we have both of those at the same time. There's all kinds of different habitats along there. Some of the other parks that have ponds and things like that are great for the winter ducks. And of course, Bryan Park also with the occasional owl nesting here and there, and that butterfly garden. So this next group is another one of those that had sort of segmenting into just one to pick one. So it's another one that typically when I'm out that way, I kind of go to all these anyways. If I'm out the Virginia Beach area, and one on the way in is Pleasure House Point. This is a very easy walking trails. It's not a big long walk. You can walk along the waterway there, but it's probably the go-to place in Virginia to see yellow-crowned night herons. These birds are fiddler crab eating specialists, which there's lots of. So low tide is a great time to time your visit to the park. Keep an eye up in the trees. The youngsters tend to just sit up there quietly during the day when it's far enough into the season that they have fledged. This is one of my all-time favorite pictures from Pleasure House Point, when this youngster here kind of wandered off in the fall back into the tall grasses. And for once, my autofocus didn't hit the grass. It actually hit the birds. That was made it a treat in itself. This is a young tricolored heron on one of the little lagoons there. Also at low tide, the clapper rails come out of the marsh grasses there and feed on invertebrates along the water's edge. You also get occasional sandpipers in there. I've seen killdeers. This is greater yellowlegs. I've seen oyster catchers, willets, all kinds of good stuff. Terns, Forster's terns, least terns. And then just across the beach, across the roadway there, is a beach. And it's always worth a peek over there to see what's there. These are the greater blackback gulls. This is a kind of courtship behavior, and you just never know what's going to pop up out of the sand while you're over there. I don't know what it is about ghost crabs. I love these little guys. This is the Atlantic ghost crab. So I always got to get a shot of two of these guys. So from Pleasure House Point, it's not a very far trip to go down past through Virginia Beach, down to the Sandbridge area. Sandbridge is a nice little, more residential sort of beach instead of the busy bustle of the of Virginia Beach boardwalk area. And just before you get to the refuge down there on the left is a big parking lot, Little City Park. It's a great place. It's one of those places I just pull over and look over the dune to see if there's anything down on the beach. This is a Forster's tern here. This is a lesser blackback gull. Grabbing him a mole crab out of the surf there. There's also a pier you can walk out on. Here's the Dunlin down there on the wash at low tide. So anytime you're doing the beach fronts and are interested in sandpipers, low tide is typically when you'll find them. Some of the others you will find otherwise, but pelicans out over the water. So it's always, a good idea to get out on the pier. It's a good vantage point and decide whether it's worth a walk out under the sand for anything else there. So immediately once you come out of that parking lot, you take a left, and within a couple hundred yards, you're going to enter Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge. It has nice little walkways over the dunes. It has a few little inland freshwater ponds. It has big savannas of marsh grass as well. So here you kind of enter into this different habitat. You can see the maritime forest in the distance. And then you also have some very nice beaches there with high dunes along the edges as well. So I always like coming in, take a nice slow drive and watch. There are ditches on both sides of the road. This is a black and white of a pair of snowy egrets that were fishing tadpoles there. But do keep an eye on your ankles. There is a pretty high density of cottonmouths of the water moccasin there in that area. It is also one of the best places to see king rails in the state of Virginia as well. Probably one of the highest populations there in that park. So from there, actually farther south is False Cape State Park. Now, many of us maybe don't have a lot of experience here. False Cape State Park has beautiful, pristine dunes. It's a very secluded area. And one of the reasons for that is because there is no direct road access to this state park. And it's the only state park that has that distinction. So it's worth getting down there. There's an occasional scheduling of shuttles and things. I'm not sure if that's going on with the pandemic, but you can check their website for that sort of thing. It's nice to get down there, or you can hike in as well. So Dunlin on the beach there at sunrise. You've got maritime forests down here. There is a couple of places you can camp down there. There's also an old hunting lodge that can be reserved. They like using that for educational purposes primarily. This is yellow jasmine that grows in the area. Also, you have young pine trees coming up, which is a preferred habitat for the prairie warbler. And then this was on a trip that Henrico County did down to the hunting lodge a few years ago. And one of the things they boasted doing while you're there was to call in a screech owl. Now that engagement is no longer that ethically popular to do, so be mindful of that as well. So some great places all right there in the pocket of Virginia Beach and southward there between Pleasure House Point and the Sandbridge area. Back Bay also gets a lot of ducks and things in the winter as well, but they do tend to restrict the accessibility more. So here's a new place that we kind of just started going to over the last year or so. I went a couple years back once. This year we've been 3 times and I've just had a terrific time. It's actually in Alexandria in the midst of a rather dense neighborhood. All of a sudden it opens up to this beautiful park with a wonderful boardwalk out over the marsh area. The first time we went this year was on a trip back in early January, specifically to get shots of the northern pintail, which is this beautiful duck here. And I was working on a new program that's all about waterfowl that we have here in Virginia. And that was one of those missing photographs that I just really didn't have great shots of. And, we really just totally nailed it there on our first trip. We decided, because one of the other species, which was green-winged teal, was there, we decided to go back a time or two to see if we could catch better shots of those. And then you always get, as you do with nature, random things showing up. This is some of my favorite pictures ever of a northern shoveler, just an absolutely gorgeous duck with that bizarre shaped bill that they use to strain seeds and matter that they scrub up off the bottom of the water. There are hooded mergansers there, which are one of the most photographic little waterfowl. They actually breed in the park, and there are people there getting shots with the youngsters as of the last few days. Green-winged teal we got on our last trip finally, and on our second trip in late January that we were there, and all of a sudden this river otter is right there swimming in front of us, swimming around, chasing fish underwater, and he pops up on this log about 15 feet in front of us. Just absolutely amazing. These are such secluded animals and stuff, and this was my absolute favorite too. I can't wait to print a nice big canvas of him. I think he's going to look really sharp. I love the color, the bokeh, the water, and everything was just really terrific. Just a great one of those lucky moments, and that I love so much about nature photography. But there's a nice nature center there. The boardwalk is super easy access. You can walk around quite a bit. They have a website that's Huntley Meadows Photography, a Facebook page, which is great for kind of checking on what's there when you're not there all the time. And so most of us in the photography group have done this trip with Captain Mike. If you haven't, go do it. It's just, there's no better way to get great shots of eagle, unless you're willing to make the 3,000-mile trek to Alaska is probably the next best place to do it. But, you know, where else can you get shots like this, full frame, close up, in action like this? I always, you know, try to remember is hold my trigger when I'm shooting till I see those claws reach out to the front a bit. And then I burst my shutter with everything it'll do until it buffers beyond control. But just tons of fun to get these shots like this too. There's just no better way to do it than from Captain Mike's boat. Always worth every penny of it, and a lot of fun. You get immature eagles. The bald eagles are there all year round. And then starting about this time of year throughout the summer, you get the bonus of ospreys as well. I love this guy sitting here with the catfish. But when it comes to action of these birds of prey, it just really doesn't get better. All my best favorite shots and my best selling images have all come from these trips. So just a ton of fun to do. Now, speaking of photographers' luck, though, the last, I think, 3 or 4 trips I've done, it's rained. And just light enough that we went, but it still rained. It was cloudy and murky, but it's still a ton of fun to do. I've got some shots with raindrops everywhere, all over them. And you get other critters and birds there along the trips as well. The great blue herons. This is a Caspian tern. Very similar looking to our royal tern, but his beak's much more orangey red than orangey yellow. Spotted sandpiper, I believe this was on our very last trip that we did too. And then we had this, this is early summer, so this is a pretty good size for a fawn that still has his spots there hidden along the bank of the river. That was a great treat there as well. So it's a great, you know, just a great trip to do. Lower James River into the tidal zone there too. Fun to do with some friends. The captain is super, super knowledgeable, and it's just always, you know, just bring a card full of great images back from his trips. Number 3 is a place I have been going for a very long time, nearly my entire life, really. Big Meadows up in the Shenandoah. The Bird Club ladies used to drag me up here as a kid and put their dentist camera in my hand, and I'd do macro photography with it. And here's Big Meadows. This is the meadow itself. About a half mile, 3/4 mile circle mowed on top of the mountain from years past that they still maintain. You know, some mornings you drive all the way up there and it's just fogged in and you can't see the end of your camera. But I go up almost every year in late May, first week of June for the fawns. This is when they're born into the world. This is the first year I ever went when I took this, and I'm pretty sure this guy is celebrating his birthday. Literally, is probably just a few hours old, barely can walk and manage his legs under his body. This one may be within a couple of weeks of age. Another newborn. This is a behavior known as bedding down, where they stay like this, hidden in the grasses. Typically the grass, by the time they're doing this, is so thick, you know, it's hard to get a shot without stuffing their face. But this past year, we had the best time ever. This one fawn, it's like he realized that those 4 things dangling down from his body were rocket boosters. And he ran around in circles, leaping in the air for 45 minutes, like the most joyous creature I've ever seen in my life. So when we go up, we'll look for does out in the field, and often the fawns stay quite hidden underneath of them. So you really got to pay attention. They could even be bedded down in those grasses nearby. Sometimes it depends on when they bush hog the field. They try to do different sections, different years. So some sections are better than others. I always start in the mornings up near the road because the sun will come up at your back right where the signs are, and the visitor center is right there in the area. There's also camping there. This little field, very picturesque with the mountains and the tree there, is the field on the left immediately before you get to the visitor center. Also out there in the field areas, you'll get some of the open field habitat birds like the field sparrow in the spring, throughout the summer, and then in the fall. We were up one year and the goldenrod was just blooming everywhere, and it was fall migration for the monarchs, and spent most of the day photographing butterflies out in the field, which was a lot of fun. Beautiful. If you're a landscape guy, the vistas up there, they are still releasing peregrines at a lek. This lek is, I believe, is just past Big Meadows that they're using now. This one here was actually on Hawksbill, but the new one now is right at the road, so you don't have to hike 2 miles to get to it, which is really neat to go see and watch anyways. You get the upland species up there too that are only here down in the Piedmont during migration, like the chestnut-sided. This is the Blackburnian warbler. These birds nest up there in elevations above 3,000 feet or so. The Canada warbler. I always want to say Canadian, and that's not what they are. If you're lucky, you might even find a bear to photograph. Or if you're unlucky, one might find you. It never gets old. So there are lots of great scenic views. There's pullovers all over the place. I love when you can catch the fog down in the valley early in the morning. This is a little before the prime of that, but I like going up in the fall for the big bucks that roam around up there. It's a non-hunted area, so it's a really great place to find some of these older bucks that are that way. But up at Big Meadows, as well as at Skyline, there's a visitor center, there's restaurants. You do need a pass to get on the Skyline Drive. You've got habitat diversity. You've got the fawns in the spring and the bucks in the fall. Great place. One of my absolute always go-to favorite places up there, coming in at number 2 is Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge. If you've not been to Chincoteague, it's worth it no matter what kind of photography you prefer, subject matter wise. There's plenty there to do, scenic or whatever you enjoy. It's one of the best places for nature I know of. And we always poke our head in a couple places. By then we're ready to get out of the car and stretch our legs. So we pull into the Eastern Shore National Wildlife Refuge, which is right as soon as you come off the Bay Bridge Tunnel on the right. They do have a visitor center too, but we typically just go straight in, ride down to the end of the road. There are a couple little ponds and boat ramp area as well. There's fiddler crabs there at the kayak launch. And then you get the critters that come in like the yellow-crowned night heron. This is an immature bird here that love to eat the fiddler crabs. And I think this may be the most photographed wrecked boat in all of Virginia. It's been there for decades now, I believe, too. But it's right there at the kayak launch. Just look to your right. Very picturesque little scene. Kipta Peak State Park is just a couple more miles up the road as well. It's a $6 entry, I believe it is currently, to go in. But it's worth the cost of admission to go down, drive down to the bay side and look over the edge to see if there are any loons hanging out in the wintertime. In the fall, it's really great for migratory birds, whether they're sandpipers like the ruddy turnstone. The previous bird was the ovenbird, another fall migrant warbler that nests in the upper elevations of Virginia as well. The fields fill with goldenrod. They've done a great job getting a lot of native plants in there. This is the Red Admiral. And they also have a hawk watch there. You can just, if you want to do some laid back birding and photography, you can just plop your lounge chair there down on the deck and watch as people point out birds as they come by and work on your flight photography. It's a lot of fun. Get to see a lot of neat birds that way. On the way across the causeway into Chincoteague, you're actually driving through Wallops Island National Wildlife Refuge. So there's a boat ramp there about halfway across the middle of the causeway. There are a couple of pullovers along the causeway, not that many, and it's a very fast road, so you got to be careful where you're at there. That was a red-throated loon we saw one winter, and then I always see the black-necked stilts out there. Got really lucky one summer and had some in close to the road for what seemed like the first time ever, so that was a real treat. Chincoteague, you know, the lighthouses are always very picturesque no matter where you go, and the Chincoteague Lighthouse certainly fits that as well. There's a pathway you can walk over to it. You can see it from just about everywhere you are in the park. But you get the coastal birds that we don't get here, like the black skimmer, kingfishers, which we do get here too, but just had one year, was just really terrific there. Got some great shots of this guy here. Black crowned night heron. These typically hang out in the corner as you drive towards the beach on the Refuge Road across from where the new pony pen is. There in the corner as you turn towards the beach to the left. There's a mating breeding pair of bald eagles that hang out at the park there. And Chincoteague also in the winter is known to have the snow geese roosting there on the ponds. They go out to the fields during the day. This was on our way home from our January trip this year. So it was one of the things we really didn't get to see the big flock. And here we are just a couple of miles south at Accomack County, right on the side of the road coming home from Chincoteague. We stood there for an hour just doing flight photography as the birds came in and out of that huge flock of about 2,500. So real treat. But back there at the refuge, you get wonderful birds in the wintertime. The Tundra Swans come in. You'll get a few of those in there. You get all kinds of ducks of various kinds. This is another from our January trip this year. This is the red-breasted merganser. So you've got ditches on both sides of the road as you travel around the refuge. There are always little ducks and herons and things in those ditches. Or if you're there on spring break and just want to lay out on the beach, you can do that there as well. You'll also find shorebirds there. This is the American oyster catcher. One of my favorite birds that breeds at this refuge, which is an endangered species, is the piping plover. Beautiful little shorebird, just about as big as a tennis ball with those little tiny orange legs and beak on them. Beautiful little bird. This was in the midst of summer. During the summer, they have the Blueberry Festival, which I'm an exhibitor at. I share my photography there at that event. And that was taken while I was there over those few days that is. My absolute favorite thing to do at Chincoteague, though, is in the evening, about halfway around the wildlife loop, is get out and walk out to the beach on the North Shore and photograph sandpipers. You got the late golden light to your back shining on the birds as they probe up and down the beach for mole crabs. Just a really great thing to do. And then one fall we were there, and something I'd always wanted to see was the Monarch Clusters. It's not quite as big as the Mexico group, but to see them in clusters like this was a real treat. And I turn around, and there on a bush behind me into the sunset is this other group. So it once again reminded me to sometimes turn around and pay attention to what's behind you. Along the wildlife loop there is nice, easy. It opens at, I believe, 2 or 3 in the afternoon, depending on the time of year. You can just cruise around slowly in your car and pull over where you want. And of course, Chincoteague is also known for its wild ponies there. They have the roundup where they check their health and things in the middle of the summer in June. That is the same weekend as the Blueberry Festival where they do the roundup. And then my nemesis critter there is the Delmarva Squirrel. I'd never gotten good shots of this in 50 years ago in there. And finally on our January trip, we were literally leaving and that guy pops up along the side of the road and then sits up and does a nice squirrel perch too. So that was our going away present, I think, from Chincoteague as we left there. One of my absolute favoriteest places, though. Great places to stop along the way. You do have to have a pass to get in the park. That helps support the efforts of the park. You can ride around, you can walk around. There are lots of walking trails too. But number one on the favorite places to go list is home. I do as much, if not more, photography, I think, in my own backyard than I perhaps do all those other places collectively, mostly because it's pretty close by. I always have permission to go there. There's just a lot of benefits to it. This was a couple years ago in the spring, shot out my laundry room window into the Leland cypress trees that edge the road there and are sort of a green fence to the cars that go up and down the road as a visual blockade, as well as providing housing for the birds. So we've gone to great extents to really include good habitat in our tiny little third of an acre lot here in Richmond. And I say tiny because I moved here with 3.5 acres in Bedford County. So to me, it seems tiny. But it's amazing the things that come in. This was also this year, this beautiful red-shouldered hawk in the morning light, sitting there watching the birds at my bird feeder. One of my, well, this is Lori's favorite species and one of mine as well, the cedar waxwing. The ones with the red tips are adult birds. So this is another thing we've done to invite birds into our yard, is provide water for them. This is actually a small water feature that I designed specifically for attracting birds. I have photographs of over 80 species sitting on this rock, the same single rock, since I've been here in Richmond. My friend installed one. I have some directions that I published on how to build it. And she calls it her bird spa. But whether you've got 1, 2 birds, 3 birds, 4 birds, it just doesn't get tired. And it always is surprising and amazes me the things that show up there. Here's 5 birds here. It's always difficult to get eye contact. Sometimes with 1 bird, definitely hard with 2. But can you imagine with 6 birds all at one time? These birds do typically travel in flocks, so it's really fun to get shots of them in their natural behavior as well. Eastern bluebirds nest somewhere around in my neighborhood. They're not currently in my box, but this was just last week too, and a long exposure setting there where you get some nice wing blur as well. I believe one of our evaluation categories as well is slow shutter speed there too. That's the brown thrasher. I love the winter scenery to the shot that won Best in Show with the Camera Club last year that I won the award for, was taken at this scene here right in my backyard in the middle of winter. So anytime those birds come, this is a pine warbler. This is typically our only true year-round warbler. And then this past spring, I'm up to 82 species. This is a fox sparrow. And if you're not a birder, this may not be very impressive to you, but as a bird watching guy and having these birds come in, it's such a beautiful sparrow. It's a very large sparrow as well. But we do provide food and shelter. Some of that food is provided through plants and native plants and butterfly gardens, and that attracts bugs that they eat. Other things are put out. We do have bird feeders as well. And of course, my little bird spa there that provides water for them, but it's always so neat. So coming up in the next couple of weeks throughout Richmond, certainly through the James River Park area and hopefully through my backyard, I'll get some warblers in. They love that bird bath. A lot of that species count is warblers, and they're some of our prettiest birds. Our local birds that come in. This is a breeding season bird, the gray catbird. Having shelter with lots of hedgerows and things where birds can nest, like the song sparrow. This was last spring right outside my living room window, about 4 feet. I actually had to keep the window open and move back across the room to shoot through the open window. We get other critters as well, not just the birds. when you provide for them, especially if you can do it in a natural way. This is the yellow and black garden spider. Beautiful, beautiful spider. And the butterflies that come into our little butterfly garden are always a treat too. This is the black swallowtail. And so we try to include some food plants for them as well. So it really just brings that stuff right at home. There's just, you know, such a great place to do it. You know, you've got the short commute. The place is always open. There's no seasonal passes you have to buy. It's good in all seasons. There's restrooms and refreshments nearby. And there's just no place like home. So thank you all for, this has been fun, kind of going through these two. It's very reminiscent for me as well to go back and revisit some of these through the photography. Just a few mentions of here too, as I spent part of the pandemic rebuilding my website completely, and have added over 2,000 images to it. I now have species galleries for individual species, both birds and mammals, along with a few other critters in there. There's a couple artistic galleries like black and whites as well. They're all available as limited edition prints on various substrates, can be special ordered. I do have instructions for the bird spa. I think they're, I think it's $17, includes shipping on the website. But if you want to do a local pickup, I can kick you back a couple of bucks too. 2022 calendars have already designed and are ready to go. Also, if you have other groups you belong to and are interested in bringing me in as a speaker, speak at lots of different kinds of clubs and groups with various services as well too. And have just really enjoyed sharing this too. If you do social media, my Facebook is iPhotoBirds, which I've been pretty highly inactive on, but I need to get pick up to. My schedule is I've been booking, went from 20, canceled events. They just were like canceled from last year to having hopes of doing a lot of art shows and stuff like I typically do, around a couple dozen every year. So looking forward to that, trying some new shows as well, which is always exciting, as well as some of the go-to ones that I love so much, Boardwalk and some of the big Virginia Beach ones and Northern Virginia ones and stuff too. So if anyone has any questions, thank you. Then I see in the chat, there are a few people chatting away in there too, and I appreciate your kind words. If anyone has questions, you probably would have to unmute yourself. As far as those goes, there are, if you get where, in the near future, you have specifics you'd like more of. I know that was a pretty fast blaze over overview, but some of those things like Big Meadows being right there at the road in the morning is great, because the sun comes up behind you, and things are so important of how you start your day. I noticed there was, let me go back up here to the Zoom. I saw there was a question about, what lens do you take on the Eagle cruise, on the Eagle tour. I have shot that with a 400 millimeter length prime lens. I have that f5.6. I don't have the big $12,000 one f2.8 that Ken does, but my friend Paul does, and he uses that. But I'm shooting the same focal length with the 400 millimeter with that. But ever since, I guess it's almost 3.5 years since I've got the 600 prime f4. I almost don't take my other one out of the box very much, just because I have so much fun with that one. It's a bit to hold. It's 12 pounds with no camera on it. So hand holding it on a boat is a good workout. And and stuff too. So I know I have to sort of get my stuff together for, about 30 seconds, and then it's going to come down, whether I want it to or not, just because of the weight. So, but it's a lot of fun to do, and it gives me, a different perspective of shots. So I'm not necessarily always getting the exact shot somebody standing right next to me is, which is, makes it really fun, as well. Let's see here. I was trying to see now.
Bob, couple things. Did you get anything down at the Great Dismal Swamp? That's number one. Number two, over at Dutch Gap, that pond empties out, and I thought it might be empty at this time of year, but you sound like you were just recently there and it still has water in it.
Yeah, so I've been to Dismal Swamp a time or two and walked the things. I've gotten a few shots in there. Dismal Swamp, most of the walkways there, I mean, the habitat's terrific. And it's always a wonderful place to go, even if you're just end up walking and don't get a picture. It's great. Sometimes you might catch something along a ditch way as well, but the habitat is pretty thick in there, so that can be challenging stuff too. But every once in a while, you get your photographer's luck and something decides it's going to, poke its head out past, the leaves a little farther. As far as Dutch Gap goes, Dutch Gap is very dependent on rainfall. And because we have had, last year we had one of our heaviest, I think third most rainfall on record, really kept it full. And we've had really good rain this year so far. So that's really a big portion of what keeps that area stuff too. In years past, it definitely has been where the water recedes back to just, puddly stuff towards way out in the middle. I will tell you that the pickerel weed is growing fast too. So the winter duck shots, there is also a wood duck that has been hanging around towards the front of the pond, which I've never seen before. That's one of the reasons I went down this morning, because I saw a couple of posts of it. And he is closer than all the other ones I've ever seen there, but they're typically 300 yards on the way far back where the prettiest birds always like to hang out. So they were closer. I saw a couple of pictures a guy shot. I think he has a Tamarron 150 to 600 and had some, he said they were best wood duck shots he ever got. So, it's always worth a look. The red-winged blackbirds are flying around crazy because it's breeding season, flaring their beautiful red shoulder patches. I did see a blue grosbeak, heard some killdeer. The eagles and ospreys are there. So it's always a great place, to go. The other thing at Dutch Gap, too, is there are some pathways. As soon as you come through the gate on the left, there's a pullover. Walk down those pathways there and head to the right. They kind of meander back there in the woods, especially during spring migration, is always a great place to check out too. Yes, Jay, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of places I was wondering about. One, I think, is probably access, and that's Presqu'Île down on the James River, and the other is Mason's Neck up in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, it's been years since I've been up to like Mason's Neck and Occoquan and all those up in there. I don't have a lot of experience in those. I've been to them, I think probably once on both of those. And the Presque Isle is a National Wildlife Refuge. And I'm not sure if they're doing things, but it used to be you could call, what's his name, Mark, I can't think of his last name right now, but you could call the refuge center and arrange to have a group brought over to the island for a little while, and they'd have their own pontoon boat and pick you up and take you over, and it's free, and which is my favorite price. And so those can be fun to do. I don't know if they're doing those with the pandemic. I would be surprised if they are at this point, but at some point in the future, occasionally the Audubon would just get a group up and say, hey, we have, 20 seats on the thing. But also in that same area is the James River National Wildlife Refuge, which has the highest winter population of bald eagles on the eastern seaboard. hang out there for the winter. And there's typically red-headed woodpeckers and other, stuff in there too. But so that's what I know about that. I did go to Presque Isle. Lori and I went back when we, probably 12 years ago, and got to go plant trees, out there, which I imagine are probably 40 feet tall by now because there were sycamores and stuff like that. So that was is a fun thing to do. But maybe that's something we could check into doing it would be a limited number as far as seats go, but just open it up to the membership to go and walk around for the day. It's a really neat place. So typically the Eagle Tour does drive around Presque Isle itself too.
Bob, I had to laugh. Susan commented that her Maltese was not amused by the bird calls.
I wonder how he liked the bear.
And then Kieran wants to know how you mix the sound in with the photos.
Yeah, so I use a very simple movie program that Apple makes, and I'm a Mac guy, and I've been using it for it's literally an entry level. It was originally a free program. I think eventually I had to buy the whole suite to get it, but it lets you put a video, you can do text, and you can do sound. The sound will let you do multiple sound bites, but you can really only do one video at a time. You can only do one text at a time. And it's got some like pre-programmed little, fade in, fade out things that you can stick in between. And that's it. It's bare bones. And I love the simplicity of it. And like I said, it does allow me to stick, that extra little multimedia component to me, mostly just to keep my spectators from going to sleep the whole time. But it really, to me, it just brings a whole different experience to watching the photographs as well. So that's what I'm using. It's called iMovie.
Bob?
Yeah, Terry.
Cornell's eBird site maps out what people are seeing, and I kind of looked at it here now and again to see where the snow geese were, etc. And I don't know if members know about that, but that is a possibility to see where like osprey are and so on. Do you use that at all to identify places to go, or are you doing this all by your contacts?
So I'm doing some of it by exploration, some of it from discussions with other photographers, especially, the nature, just like I'm sure guys that do a lot of landscape will say, oh, you got to go here and stand on this rock and, lean to the left a little at 4:30 in the afternoon on a partly sunny day. It's a lot like that. And one of the things I love about photography, and it's part of that fellowship thing, that wherever we go, whether it's little short 2-hour travel trips or, or 200 miles across the other side of the state, or 2,000 across the country, is when we engage with other photographers. And Florida is really great with this too, is, you all of a sudden there's 3 people standing there and you're like, hey, what are you guys shooting? And it's like, oh yeah, what have you seen around here? And all of a sudden you got a list of new places you've either never been, or you're like, oh really? Yeah, I know where that place is. And they're like, yeah, you just go down here and right past the cattails, it's sitting right there on the log, And so, that's part of it too. I absolutely have used eBird when we did our January freezing cold to go see the waterfowl, which is when they're here, trip up north. We went to Huntley Meadows was one that I watched their birds too. I watch it on their Facebook page. Some groups have a Facebook page that have photographers that go there regular. Is a great resource that does the exact same thing that you were saying, Terry. eBird does the same thing. One of the things we had hoped to do while we were in Maryland was to go look for short-eared owls, and had located a couple of places, had a lead from another guy of a general area, but nothing specific. And the area was vast. I mean, like square miles and miles and miles. And found a couple of pings, that came up on a search for that. But then actually found a much better very direct. Somebody said, "Oh yeah, I know exact place you can go." Da, da, da. Just talking to somebody that was in Alexandria. We didn't make it on that part of the trip because we had such a good, our research had worked out well enough while we were in Maryland at other places that we ended up spending an extra day there. And that's, my friend Paul that was outstanding on the rock in that second picture at Grayson Highlands up on the cliff top there. We have sort of a standing rule when we're out together, and it is don't drive past your shots, because you think there's something better down the road. It's like you stand there, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty good, but I think there might be something better down the road. And you get down the road, there's nothing there, and you just bypassed, something that might, if you just spent a little time on, might have been a terrific, opportunity. So we always look at each other and say, don't drive past the shots. So that's something I always kind of glean from that too. But yeah, eBird is a great source. It's like all over the place too. So if you're traveling to places, you can get an idea of specifically what time of year you're there, what has been seen there historically during that time of year. When I went to New Mexico a few years ago to Bosque del Apache, I knew pretty much what to expect. And on a good day, I'd even tried to start learning some of the bird songs, which I found impossible to learn for a quick trip to do, because that to me is not that quick of a memory thing. It takes years of repetition. So, but yeah, great questions, Terry.
The other one, I'm not sure I remember it correctly since my memory isn't very good these days. Off of 5 is VCU, I think, has like a research facility, nature center down there.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered if I could get in there and if it was worthwhile wandering around in there with the camera.
It is. I've been there, and it's something that will come back, and I will try to remember to push that to the club when it happens. Is they would, like in the summer, do like a sleepover night, and they would like, you could go on bird walks in the morning. They did an owl hoot. They hung up a sheet with black lights, and all the cool bugs came to it, and big moths and stuff. And went called for barred owls and screech owls and stuff. And if you wanted to, you could pitch a tent. People brought food. It was a big cover dish thing back in the days when you could do cover dish things. And but it was just a kind of a word would go out. I'm not sure specifically what group it was coming with, but somehow it would find its way to the Audubon group and stuff. But if that happens again, when it does, but that's one of the few direct portals I know of to get in there. That area in general is very interesting too. There are a few places around there. I was trying to think. There's a campground, and I'm not sure how if they're still as user friendly as they used to be. Right as you cross the Chickahominy Bridge on the left, we used to camp there years ago. We did catfishing trips and all kinds of stuff there. But it was always kind of neat. Had big piers you could walk out on and stuff like that. So, but you're not far once you're there from Jamestown and those other places too. Lions Bridge is active now. I've seen a few pictures from the Nature Club group there with. I think the last one I saw was a great blue heron with a herring in its mouth. And the ospreys are coming in to the area too. They were at Dutch Gap, and I've seen them 3 or 4 other places, the ones in Richmond as well. So let's see. Was there any other questions?
Yeah,
I think
I don't
that's
think I
most of
see
them.
any others, but
I'm looking
this has
at
been
those
great
in the
information.
chat.
Bob, maybe you and I can get together and we can come up with a list, kind of a summary of what you presented, and we can put that in the newsletter for people.
Sure, sure. That'll be a great
roadmap if they want to take that tour.
Yeah. Yeah,
Also
those
take
fun.
your slides and just put them all on one sheet of paper.
Yeah, I can definitely make a list on there too. I actually have one. I have a program I do that's it's called Easy Access Birding in Florida. And I think on that one, I actually have a listing with the GPS points and all that stuff on it. So if you're going to Florida, that PDF file is on my website. If you go into the, there's a button across the top there, one of the main buttons that says programs. And if you go to the one that says Florida, it shows up there. I believe it's directly on that page, and you can download that map. So if you're looking, and from there you can research, too, where good places in there and things like that too. Some of those places like Circle B Bar and stuff also have Facebook groups. So always check out, Facebook for that kind of stuff.
Great idea. All right. Well, we definitely wanted to thank you again for putting this together for us. And you may not know, but Bob has been a great emissary for us even before he became president. He did a similar presentation for the Rotary Club of Richmond Rotary, and then also to the Virginia group AARP volunteers. So he's quite in demand around the area. And I think he mentioned earlier, if you know of other groups that would like to have him come and speak, he does enjoy, sharing his knowledge and his gorgeous pictures with folks. And we are just thrilled to have him, as part of our club, and especially now as our fearless leader. So I think with that, we are going to call it a night, and hopefully we'll see everyone at our May meeting. And that is going to be an evaluation. So for any of you who are new and you have any questions about how we do image evaluations, there's a lot of information on our website. I think Terry mentioned earlier, there's some links out there on how to do it. But again, any of our board members would be happy to chat with you and help you through that. So we're hoping to see everybody again on Zoom in May. But as Bob mentioned earlier, we're looking into how we can possibly get back together in person safely sometime this year. So Bob, any final words?
Just, that meeting is May 12th, and that is scheduled to be on Zoom. The next board meeting is scheduled for April 28th, which will be venturing into trying to figure out the logistics of hybridizing our meetings for when that day comes, that we can all be together again too. And I really just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Karen, too, for driving the ship tonight too, and not wrecking. And appreciate the opportunity from everyone to share my passion for photography with you all, because I sure enjoy. That's one of the things I love most about the evaluations, is seeing everyone else's work too, because we don't always get to see that. And we've got a pretty good sized group going here. I believe this coming month is just a regular evaluation, right? No special topic, just regular evaluation.
Oh, I have to check.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So you can put in 2 of your anything photos, no particular subject or genre. I always keep in mind what are the end of year competition categories. If you don't know what those are, I think there's some lists on the website. I know if you go and look at the galleries of previous years, you can see them listed there as you go through the pictures. That's one of the great things I love with our website, is being able to go back and look at those and see what kind of work that the judges. We always have out of town judges from the Photographic Society of America join us for that. Carol Hageman helps arrange that too, along with Bob Pappas, I think helps too, a bunch of the group as well. So we look forward to that coming at the end of the year, whatever form or medium it happens to be in, hopefully in person with a nice buffet like we've done in the past to celebrate everybody's talents. Yes, sir, Michael.
No, it is a assigned subject. It's backlight.
Oh, backlight.
Really? I
Okay.
thought it was no assigned subject. Excuse me.
If you look, I thought it was. I just verified on the website with the calendar. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, my calendar says backlight too.
I apologize, Karen. Excuse me.
Yeah, my error too. I meant to look too, and I'm glad I know that now, because I'd have probably sent in the wrong stuff then. Yeah, so go point your camera in the wrong direction, right into the sun. Don't burn the sensor. Don't point it right at the sun too long. You'll burn up the sensor.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I
Some good
apologize.
silhouette
Backlight.
shots. That should be great.
Silhouette
So-
shots, okay.
Yep.
And then
backlight.
just to add, the deadline for submitting those photos to our fabulous digital director is midnight the Saturday prior to the May meeting. So if somebody has a calendar there handy,
I got one across the room here. Oops.
It's May 8th,
May 8th. All
Yep.
right.
which is Mother's Day weekend.
That's right.
Yeah. So get them in early. Michael would appreciate that, right,
Get 'em in
Michael?
early.
Yes.
Yes, he's doing yes.
And you could put two of the same assigned subject,
No.
one of the same.
One assigned subject, one nothing, one everything, anything
ribbon.
and everything.
One anything.
One
And
anything.
if you choose not to do the assigned subject, you can only submit one image
Correct.
of a regular.
Okay.
Right.
We're really mean like that. We want you to expand your horizons and tackle those assigned subjects.
And
Yeah,
read,
so if-
and read the directions in the newsletter.
Yeah.
If
Read that
there are-
newsletter.
If there are any visitors that would like to join the club, you do have to be a club member to participate in those evaluations, as well as the end of year event itself to the competition too. But it's really is a lot of fun. That in itself, to me, makes membership worth it there by itself. But there are directions on how to prepare your files. And how to name the file so that it flows smoothly for Michael in our system, who is our director who handles that massive beast of when all those pictures come in and gets them arranged and ready to display for the evaluator to go through and see. So help him out by trying to make sure your work is entered correctly. And then you don't have to get fussed at either.
Right. You don't want Michael coming after you.
That's right.
All
Well,
right.
thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for your kind words. It's been fun, and look forward to seeing everyone next month, if not before then.
May 5th. Cinco de
Thank
Mayo.
you. Good night, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Take
everybody.
care. Great
Bye-bye.
job, Bob. Thank you.
Great show,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Great show.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Excellent presentation.